I came back from a short vacation expecting quiet skies and 6 months of peace, but instead I found bulldozers ripping through my father's 40-year cornfield. My family's land was being carved up like a construction site, dust choking the air stalks flattened under steel tracks. And there she was, Patricia Brown, in a designer white suit stepping out of her BMW with the kind of confidence only money or debt could buy. She looked me up and down like I was trash left behind in the field, then shoved a $5,000 community development fee in my hand. $5,000 just to exist on my own property. She told me in that ice-cold corporate voice that people like me should relocate somewhere more appropriate. I'll never forget that sneer. What she didn't know, what made all of this a deadly mistake for her, was that the broke-looking farmer she was trying to bulldoze out of town was actually the deputy director of the Federal Aviation Administration. I'd come home to Oklahoma to rest, maybe fix up the old barn, maybe just sit on the porch and watch the crops sway. 25 years of managing U.S. airspace had drained me, and this farm was supposed to heal that. Instead, orange survey stakes littered the ground like a sick joke, and heavy machinery chewed through soil that had fed 3 generations of Andersons. Patricia didn't even ask who I was, she assumed. Called me a caretaker, ordered me to clear out. When I said, "This is my farm," her face twisted in disgust. She treated me like a bug she couldn't quite squash. Then she dropped that glossy invoice $5,000 due in 2 weeks like she was doing me a favor. I stood there with my beat-up pickup behind me, her BMW gleaming in the sun, and for a split second I actually wondered, am I crazy? Am I the one out of place? But then I looked at the scale of the construction professional-grade excavators graders survey crews. This wasn't a neighborhood project. It was an airstrip right in controlled Class D airspace 15 miles from Tulsa International. I knew instantly no permits, no clearances, no chance in hell this was legal. So I pulled out my phone, made sure she saw it, and spoke just loud enough. "Reynolds, start a file. Patricia Brown. Unauthorized private airstrip. Potential federal violations. Enforcement level comprehensive." Her smile flickered just for a moment. She muttered something about government pensioners trying to intimidate successful businesswomen. But I could see her hands shake. She thought she was untouchable. 3 days later, she staged a big HOA meeting at the community center. Slick presentation, fancy charts, renderings of a premium aviation community. She called it progress. She called it elevating standards. But sitting in those folding chairs were the real people of this neighborhood, mostly elderly folks on fixed incomes who had built this place from scratch. Margaret Thompson, 72, retired teacher, stood up with fire in her eyes. 40 years I've lived here. You can't just push us out because we're old and not rich." Patricia's reply could have frozen the air. Demographics evolve. Mrs. Thompson. Adapt or move. That night, Margaret showed up at my door, tears streaking her face, clutching a $600 fine for her mailbox. Same mailbox she'd had for 15 years. That was the moment I saw the pattern. This wasn't random bullying. It was systematic. Patricia was squeezing the vulnerable until they broke, using fines and fees to drive them out. And it worked unless someone pushed back. I'll be honest, there was a night I sat at my kitchen table staring at that fine, staring at the destruction outside, and I thought, maybe I should let it go. Maybe it's not my fight. I came here to rest. Do I really want to spend what's left of my peace going to war with a woman in heels and a clipboard? Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I don't belong here anymore. That thought hit me hard, like maybe she was right that people like me should just get out of the way. But then I remembered Margaret's face, the tremble in her voice when she said, "We built this." I remembered my father's hands calloused from working this soil, and I realized if I didn't stand up now, Patricia would steamroll not just my land, but everyone who couldn't fight back. So I decided, fine. Let her think I'm some broke farmer. Let her underestimate me. I'd let her dig her own grave, and I'd be there to hand her the shovel. Turns out, Patricia wasn't just arrogant, she was drowning. Mortgaged her house, borrowed $200,000 from ruthless investors, promised them an airstrip in 3 months. She needed money fast, so she bled the community with fake aviation fees. She even hired a consultant, Steve Wilson, hoping his credentials would make it legit. But Steve took one look at the site and told her point blank, "This is illegal. You're building inside controlled airspace without clearance." Patricia brushed him off, but I could see the panic behind her eyes. Meanwhile, neighbors rallied. They formed Protect Our Neighbors. Patricia countered with a group of her own posting pictures of elderly folks' houses online labeled renovation opportunities. That's when I knew she'd gone too far. This wasn't just a bad idea, it was elder abuse wrapped in corporate branding. Pressure closed in from every side. Her investors wanted results. The community was documenting every crooked move. Local news sniffed out the story, and I kept feeding her paranoia, dropping words like federal compliance and safety review into phone calls where she could overhear. She never could pin down exactly who I was, and that uncertainty ate at her. Finally desperate and cornered, she announced her grand event, a public demonstration of the new airstrip. County officials invited investors flying and news cameras rolling. She was betting everything on that day. If a plane landed, she'd prove success. If it didn't, well, she couldn't afford that outcome. Friday morning came clear and blue, perfect flying weather. Patricia stood in front of a white event tent, microphone in hand. Suit, pristine, smile, stretched thin. Investors shifted nervously. Elderly residents gathered with protest signs. And me, I parked my old truck between the luxury cars, dust still clinging to the paint, and walked straight toward the crowd. Patricia spotted me and forced a smile. "Mr. Anderson, this really isn't the time." But I didn't stop. The air changed as I stepped up to the podium. I pulled out my wallet, flipped open the case, and held it high so every camera caught it. The gold seal glinted in the sunlight. "My name is James Anderson, Deputy Director of the Federal Aviation Administration." The gasp that went through that crowd could have blown the tent down. Investors paled. Reporters surged forward. Patricia's face drained of color like someone had pulled the plug. She stammered, "That's impossible." I pointed toward the little aircraft circling overhead, ready to land on her illegal strip. I pulled out my phone, put the call on speaker. "Tulsa Tower, this is Deputy Director Anderson, FAA. Unauthorized strip southwest of you. Deny landing clearance. Vector aircraft away." The reply was instant. "Roger, Deputy Director." Aircraft redirected. The plane banked, turned, and vanished from the approach. The cameras caught everything. Patricia's grand opening collapsed into dust in real time. I looked at her then, at the crowd. For 3 months, this woman harassed seniors on fixed incomes, collected $45,000 in fraudulent fees, built an illegal airstrip in federally regulated airspace. "Too bad for you, Patricia, you built it in my airspace." Sheriff's deputies arrived with FAA violation notices. Investors swarmed Patricia demanding refunds, threatening lawsuits. Reporters shoved microphones in her face while she stood frozen, reputation shredded on live TV. Elderly neighbors wept not in fear this time, but in relief. And me, I walked back to my truck, dust swirling around my boots badge tucked away again. Patricia's empire had crumbled. Her mask ripped off and her so-called vision exposed for what it was: fraud, cruelty, and arrogance. The lesson is simple. Never mistake quiet for powerless, and never judge a man by the dirt on his boots.